Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is brought to you by SharedServicesLink.com and sponsored by Shuttle. We're going to be looking today at the Maersk-Line-Global Shared Services story, and in particular, how the Shared Services organization is driving operational efficiency in its use of SAP. So I extend to you a very warm welcome indeed. My name is Susie West, and I'm the founder and CEO at SharedServicesLink.com, and I'm being joined today by Carsten Lund, who's Head of Transformation and Transition Finance Processes at AP Moller-Maersk, Evan Schultz, Sales Director UK and Ireland at Shuttle, and Satish Kamath, who's Solutions Engineer at Shuttle as well. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to my speaker panel today. Let's have a look at your role in all of this. You've obviously signed into this webinar today for a very particular reason, so do make sure that you get all of your questions answered during this invaluable 60-minute session. So how that works is you just need to submit your question in your GoToWebinar panel to me. That will come through to me, and I will be asking your questions on your behalf in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. So make sure you get that through to me sooner rather than later. The sooner you get your question through to me, the more likely it is that it will be asked. So let's have a little bit of a look at as to why we're actually having this conversation today. So when we do polls at SharedServicesLink.com, it might not surprise you that the most commonly used ERP, especially in Europe, is SAP. We find that when we survey our members, around 60 to 65 and occasionally 70% of our subscribers, our members, actually run their operations off SAP. So what we're finding increasingly that SAP and shared services and their implementation indeed are very much hand in glove as projects are concerned, but also they're hand in glove as far as performance excellence is concerned as well. I think if you layer on top of that the fact that SAP is indeed the biggest IT investment that finance looks to make in a generation, it puts a huge importance on making sure that the organization really is getting as much as it can out of the SAP investment. And I think if layer even more on top of that, the focus that today in our finance world and in our shared services delivery world, there's a huge focus on data, and that's the quality of data, the timeliness of data, the credibility of data, and being able to rely on that data as a single source, a single version of the truth, and for it to have a reliability and a credibility that the finance team and the senior management team can trust. So I think looking at all of those components together, I'm really interested to therefore examine the Maersk story in this session. So just before I hand over to our first speaker, I would like to run the first poll, please. So coming up on your screen now, you should see the first poll. So please let us know a bit about your role within your company as it relates to SAP shared services. Please tick the appropriate box. Are you involved, are you a SAP analyst or involved in continuous improvement? Are you within the accounting, finance, or HR profession? Are you in the shared services or global business services role? Or are you in the IT role, supporting finance, accounting, or HR? Or perhaps another applies. So we like to get these numbers up nice and high, ideally in the 70s. So we're currently at 69%. So if you haven't responded, please do so. And I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Right, let's have a look at the nature of the profile of the people that we've got on the line today. they're closing the poll and sharing the results with you right now. We came up to 78% there, so thank you very much for your participation in that. You can see there quite clearly that just shy of half of the viewers on this webinar today are very much involved in shared services and global business services. So thank you very much indeed for that. Interesting results there. So with great pleasure, I am introducing our first speaker, and that's Evan Schultz from Wind Shuttle. Over to you, please, Evan.
Thank you, Susie. Good morning and afternoon, all. Briefly, today's agenda. I'll start by setting the stage, introducing Wind Shuttle, and discussing the challenges that we look to address. I'll then hand over to Karsten, who will share with us the Maersk story and how they've deployed Wind Shuttle and the benefits they're receiving today. This will be followed by Satish showing us a demonstration of what we're actually talking about being used at Maersk. And then I'll wrap up with a discussion around our business value assessment. As you can see there, we do have time set aside at the end to take your questions in a Q&A session. Just briefly about Wind Shuttle. For those of you who are not familiar with Wind Shuttle, we have been supporting and simplifying SAP usage for a decade, helping customers to get the most of their SAP investment as a system of record. We are a proven and trusted solution with just over 1,600 customers globally. And as you can see there, we are a certified solution, and we've been supporting customers in their SAP journey all the way back from version 4.6c through to the latest versions of ECC6 today, and will continue to do so into the future. And finally, it's important to note that both SAP and Microsoft are customers of Wind Shuttle. The benefits of Wind Shuttle that we will discuss today and the capabilities that Satish will demonstrate are applicable across the entire SAP transactional estate. The horizontal nature of our solution is reflected in the diverse nature of our customer base, which you see represented here on the slide. So what are some of the shared services challenges that we look to address? I'd like to highlight three in particular. Of course, shared services are all about pushing through volumes of data, and really what we're typically talking about there is mass transactions, so it's really the heavy lifting that's required within SAP. A key challenge is really around data quality. And we know that a key goal for shared services organizations is to be able to capture and resolve issues as early in the process as possible, because of course the earlier you capture and resolve an issue, the lower the cost of doing that. And finally, end-to-end process visibility, in other words, the ability to enforce standardization and compliance across an entire process. How does Wind Shuttle address these challenges? Well, we address these challenges and deliver value by making it easier to create a standardized process while providing a simplified interface and process flow which enhances the end-user experience. We will demonstrate Wind Shuttle workflow, which provides control and visibility from end to end of a process, and importantly allows you to extend the process participation out to non-SAP users. So what makes us different from other solutions? Because of course, as you know, there are many options available for how to address the challenges that we've described. The key with Wind Shuttle is the difference in the journey to a solution. We follow a no programming approach. As a result, the key skill sets that are required for effectively using our platform to create and deploy solutions are two. One is SAP functional knowledge, and the second is knowledge of your specific business processes. As a result, this expands the pool of resources that are able to contribute to solution creation, as you are no longer limited to and reliant upon ABAP or other technical coders. Of course, customers need to bring their SAP functional knowledge and business process skills to the table, along with executive sponsorship, in order to be successful. Wind Shuttle Foundation is an agile platform that provides rapid creation and iteration of solutions, and you'll see that, hear that spoken about today. This rapid creation means it's much faster time to a solution being deployed in the business, which of course in turn means much faster time to value being realized. Of course, putting a solution in place is just the beginning. How to maintain and easily adjust with your changing business needs is key. And the agile nature of our platform and the speed with which you can iterate and make changes is how we provide a lower total cost of ownership. This is a very brief introduction to Wind Shuttle, hopefully setting the stage for our following conversation. What I'd like to do now is to hand it back to Susie for another poll question.
Thank you very much indeed, Evan. So coming up on your screen now, let's have a look at some of your main challenges. And you're very much invited to tick a number of boxes. So please feel free to tick all the boxes that resonate with you. What are your main challenges for your shared services organization today? Is it the expansion of the business offering, which is putting strain on the organization potentially? Automation of manual tasks, reducing communication and transparency gaps, improving current end-to-end processes, reducing process variance across regions and markets, so really putting a big focus on standardization there. So tick as many of the boxes that apply to your organization and the challenges that you face today. We're currently at 65%, so if you haven't responded, please do so, and I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results. We came in at 72% of you responding there, so thank you very much for that. And you can see 3 clear winners there. So coming in first place, improving current end-to-end processes. So that's interesting. That's very much front of mind for a lot of the shared services leaders that we liaise with. And just ahead of it, actually, at 77%, automation of manual tasks. So very relevant for this debate today. And in third place, we've got reducing process variance. So really driving standardization across your processes globally. So interesting results there. And that takes me on very nicely to introduce our second speaker for today. That's Carsten Lind from AP Moller-Maersk. Over to you, please, Carsten.
Thank you very much, Susie and Evan, for the introduction. Good morning to all of you. I'll start out by telling you a little bit about, the Maersk Global Service Centers, to those of you who don't know us. The Maersk Global Service Centers is a part of the AP Moller-Maersk Group, and the AP Moller-Maersk Group is a privately held Danish conglomerate. We operate in both the shipping and the energy sector, and as well as retail. But for today, we'll be focusing largely on what we do within the shipping sector. We are a group that operate out of more than 100 countries, and the journey for our Global Service Center started back in 1999. And we have seen a constant growth over the years, both in terms of the people as well as the functional tasks that we operate in the system. So today we are close to 12,000 people divided over 5 locations, and we are truly multifunctional operation in all the sites. As I said, we operate out of 5 sites today, 3 in India, 1 in the Philippines, and 1 in China. And we support 9 languages actively, as voice communication or written communication out of those service centers. When we over the years have grown, in the start we only served Maersk-Line as our biggest customer. We have now grown to be serving 9 out of 11 business units within the group. The vast majority, however, of operation is still in supporting Maersk-Line. And Maersk-Line has chosen SAP as its core ERP system, and is also on that platform that we have actually implemented WindShuttle and are using WindShuttle. As we finished our SAP implementation at the end of 2010, we had ended up with a process and a system landscape which was far from, desirable. We were supporting a total of 160 financial processes. For each of these financial processes, we had a global blueprint, so basically a target model for how we wanted to operate and how we wanted to execute the specific process. However, even with that in mind, we had ended up with more than 1,000 local variants and more than 100 local, based programs in Excel or Access or any other kind of system that the local organizations felt that they needed to work on to complement our SAP platform. Of course, these variants and local programs really was seen as a need, because locally people did not feel that the SAP platform giving them the user experience or the transactional execution automation that they really were expecting, or maybe they felt they had before. So there were a lot of good reasons locally why people actually felt there was a need for this. Unfortunately, we also found out that we did not have as strong a governance as we wanted to have on the local programs. So they were like mushrooming all over the place. We couldn't control whether somebody in Brazil was suddenly making a program, somebody in a shared service was making a program for the same process. So we really just kept adding on new processes, new variants, new systems on an ongoing basis. So Taking that into mind, we also had an ongoing requirement from our CFO of keeping up with the demand on year-to-year efficiency gains. So we really had a truly landscape that we didn't have fully under control, and we had a need for keep optimizing, standardizing, and automating our processes. So to hold that development, we in the middle of 2010 started looking at how we could replace all of these unstructured tools in our IT landscape with one or more standard solutions. We used our contacts inside, say, the third-party BPO, as well as started looking at what people we had brought on board from external actually had of previous experiences. So we rather fast went into a short list of 3 potential solutions, and by the middle of 2010, we had already at that time conducted a proof of concept with Wind Shuttle in our facilities in Chennai. We had also engaged with Wind Shuttle, say, to review our processing volumes and potential benefits, and for that we actually used the business value assessment exercise from Wind Shuttle. The standard business value assessment framework that was run by Wind Shuttle and allowed us to visualize, say, the full potential of Wind Shuttle and also what potential it would hold if we actually implemented across all our transactions handled inside SAP. Our business case was then finalized and the contract was signed in the middle of 2011. And by Q3 2011, we actually mobilized our project team. We had the platform up and running, and had also agreement with our internal stakeholders and IT governance on the scope for our phase 1 of the Wind Shuttle implementation. One of the important backgrounds of why we could move that fast was really the ability to prioritize which processes or which tasks and transaction codes we wanted to do based on the business value assessment. So really the business value assessment there was invaluable for us. As we reached the early 2012, we did see the first scripts having passed through our testing, going live in our production platform on SAP. We already at that time started assessing the opportunities for phase 2. And also we started with that conducting awareness sessions in all our sites in the GSC, both say images and to our external stakeholders sitting in our process ownership functions in Copenhagen. Getting to the middle of 2012, we had then concluded on our entire phase 1, including a benefit realization. And we will now on the next slide get a little bit more into detail about, say, the benefits. When we're looking right now, we're actually, say, starting on our phase 2, and we're expecting to have our phase 2 completed fully by the end of this year. When we're going a little bit deeper into our, say, decisions around phase 1 of the Wind Shuttle project, let's first have a look at the BVA. So the business value assessment, as we said earlier, really did clearly allow us to pinpoint our pain points we had in the process, both in terms of where we had most of our people engaged. That wasn't really a big surprise to us, we knew that, but also what were actually our processing times, and also based on volumes and process steps, where we actually would have the most benefit if we prioritize those areas from a rapid implementation. So we ended up prioritizing a number of scripts, but we right now just focus on the 2 largest ones that we focus on here. So if you look at focus area 1, we did focus on the payment posting. In our standard project timeline, it took us 13 weeks from the moment we said now we kick off that specific script, develop it, test it inside our IT governance, stress test it against our sandbox environment, promote it into production, and fully rolled out to all our GSC sites. The benefits we had there was in the a little bit above $300,000, and we actually saw an improvement in the processing time with a factor of 10. The second focus area that we had was a timeline of 13 weeks, again for the payment clearance, again following exactly the same standard process of mobilizing, developing the script, getting it tested, promoting it into the sandbox environment, getting it stress tested again before we moved it into production. We saw a benefit of about $165,000, and again a improvement in the processing time with a factor of 10. Well, what does this in essence mean to us was that within the first year of operation, we had actually paid back the investment that we had made. And we also had a clear lookout, still with the essence of the BVA, to actually know that there was still a lot more to come. So what had all made it possible for us to get this investment paid back that fast? Well, I have first of all to admit that there's not a lot of rocket science to that. It's really, first and foremost, use the business value assessment to ensure that the prioritization is made, and also making sure that it's made based on facts. At the same time, the BVA also allowed us to deselect some areas as we had other solutions either in place or around the corner to be implemented. Next, we are sure to deploy a project team with a good mix of functional and technical expertise. As you saw on the previous slide, we had a project team in every of our GSC sites and also with the central project control and management. We ensured to place our project teams in the site so we could get close to the end users and ensure that the solution design actually improved the end user experience and also focus on getting the transactions right the first time. During our phase one, we also did a lot of internal marketing. Well, it sounds easy to do, but there's actually quite a lot of elements around that. First of all, we of course had to show a lot of our stakeholders what did WindShuttle actually do, how does it actually operate, and why is it not a threat to SAP, but how is it supplementing the experience on SAP. And when you're looking at a finance organization, of course, money talks. So we also, by simply the virtue of having a payback as fast as we had, it actually turned a lot of perception around about WindShuttle actually being a good product. Now, secondly, we also had a lot of assistance from WindShuttle in our internal marketing. What has been a very positive experience for us is actually the deep involvement post just the sale of getting just the software delivered to us we've seen from the WindShuttle team. This has also been through regular follow-up meetings, both, say, on-site in our GSCs, but also with the project team and with our stakeholders here in Copenhagen, but also, as I said, on-site visits to our shared service center to simply learn how are we actually working with their product in a day-to-day environment, getting inspiration for that, and giving our advisors how can we actually get further. Last but not least, of course, a critical success factor for us has been to keep a clear focus on our mass transactions and only post those big mass transaction codes, then go into a more advanced setup of looking at how can we use the other technology stacks within the WindShuttle platform. Now, to give you a brief idea of what we're looking for to achieve with our phase 2 that's currently ongoing, then as number one, we actually started to use the workflow component from the technology stack to supplement the scripts and the validation patterns that we already have implemented in the phase 1. We are looking at improving the process of booking the payments, or applying the payments that we receive across our counters in various countries. This, where it's a relatively simple improvement, will actually again reap quite some benefits for us. Plus also it will actually be improving the customer experience for the customers that come to visit us in our offices to pay us for the services we have delivered through a faster turnaround time at our counter. And last but not least, of course, reduce the amount of rework if those kind of payments are wrongly applied in the system. As a second point, we'll be continuing our cleanup of all the macros that we have in our system. And the aim is really to complete our restructuring of our process and system landscape from all these Excel files and macros that we have, move them all into WindShuttle so that we have a full view on where such applications are being used, what is the value, and what volumes are actually going through these different applications. We are quite sure this will reap some further benefits as well in terms of reduced maintenance costs, but also improve our, simplify our process landscape and remove process variance. At this point in time, if you're looking at it, we actually found out where we thought we had a little bit above 100 applications around the world, that we actually were far beyond 200, 250. We are now down to about 50 applications that we still have to move on to the WindShuttle platform. And we also know that we have all by now had more than just the initial, say, investment paid back, and there's still a lot more to come. Now, I wish to thank you for your attention, and I'm actually curious about how WindShuttle actually works in real life. So I'll now hand you over to Satish for a comprehensive live demonstration of the WindShuttle product.
Thanks a lot, Carsten, and time to see the products in action. So what you're seeing right now on your screen is a normal Excel template, but what we have inside it is an embedded scripts of WindShuttle. So let me walk you through how you can use Excel as an alternative front end to actually exchange information between SAP. So what you see here within your Excel is a WindShuttle add-in. Now, why do I see this add-in? It's because I've got WindShuttle software installed on my computer. Now, what do I do as an end user? So I'm going to walk you through a data maintenance scenario wherein the need is to extract the information that's already existing in SAP, make a few changes, and put it back into SAP. Now, the use case here that I'm presenting is material price update, but you could apply this to any regular data maintenance activity that you could do. And we refer to this scenario as a round-trip scenario. So I'm going to extract 25 records, and I'm going to use WindShuttle query to do that. So I click on the Run button, connect to the SAP system of my choice. Now you may want to connect to your SAP QA, test, production, pre-production, etc. So select the system, provide your client username and password, and then click the OK button. Now at this point, WindShuttle is going to make connection with SAP and verify if you're an authorized user. And once you're verified as an authorized user, the query can be set up with a selection screen. Now why do we need a selection screen? It's because it will help us, streamline the data extraction process, and different teams could use the same query to run and extract different information. Now we could provide F4 help as well, which is click of the button, you could actually go to SAP, get the list of values and select one of them. So that's one of the options you could provide to the end users, or you could simply allow them to type in the values as well. And the selection screen is really driven by the user, so you could actually make a few fields mandatory, few fields optional, and so on. And once the data is populated, click the OK button, and it's going to talk to SAP and get the relevant information out. Now, we also respect org level security, which means if you're an authorized user and you're only authorized to use, let's say, company code 1000, you'll be only able to extract the data for that specific company code only. Now, what's happening in the background is WindShuttle query is now getting into SAP, retrieving all the information that we've requested, and it's presented onto the spreadsheet. Now, you could use query as a standalone application that can help you create ad hoc reports or operational reports that you could use for your day-to-day operations, or you could use it alongside transaction like I'm doing now to actually update the information in SAP. Now, what you could see here is the prices have been retrieved, and what I would like to do is update the prices of the materials that I have retrieved in this exercise. Now, Excel being Excel, what you can also notice is that you could complement this with your VLOOKUPs, formula, macros, etc. So that will also be possible to integrate into the same Excel template. So what I do now is I'm happy with the data updates that I have done. So I've updated the prices, and I have got a new effective date, which is again a formula driven in Excel. And what I would like to do now is get back into the transaction add-in of WindShuttle, which can help me update the prices. So I'm going to play with a small data set here just for the demonstration. But what I would like to do is show you the ability to actually get into a transaction code into SAP and upload this information. So I'm going to click the test button, again verify my credentials with SAP system, and if I'm an authorized end user for this particular transaction, WindShuttle can help me upload the information into that specific transaction. Now the key point to note here is that we have enabled a backup feature, which means while you're doing the while you're doing the data updates, we also retrieve a backup copy of that particular data, which is residing in a separate spreadsheet. Now the use of that particular sheet in your Excel could be, you could look at the information that was existing before the changes were made, and then in case you want to revert it back, you could simply switch into this particular backup data sheet, click the button, and you can restore all the information back in SAP. Now that was a use case around round trip. Now let me show you another use case, which is in finance. Now if you're familiar with the finance transactions, FB50, FB60 are the top heavily used transactions in the finance module. Typically they go with the header and line item kind of structure, and WindShuttle supports that. Now you could have two alternative look and feels for the same transaction. We also support an Excel form-based look interface, which is a single data record with a header and a lot of line items in. Click the button, you could upload the data into SAP, or you could go based on the form approach, which is having separate sections here which represent 4 different documents. So I'm trying to upload actually 4 AP invoices into SAP. Now you could apply this to any transaction of your choice, which means you could look at the sales order, purchase requisition, etc. in the same way. Now what I have here is an incorrect cost center, which is a common scenario to have a error on your data spreadsheet. Now let's look at how Wind Shuttle transaction can help us deal with this upload process. So what I do as an end user is click on the transaction add-in, and what you'll see here is I can actually choose the master the form view, click on the test button, connect to SAP, and click on OK button to start the process. Now what happens in the background is there is an intelligent script sitting inside this Excel, which is created using Wind Shuttle transaction, that knows this data needs to go into which specific field of SAP in the transaction code FP60. And it's a synchronous update. So the benefit to the end user is that you're getting the document numbers right on your Excel, and you know what's going on with the data upload process. In this specific example, like I mentioned, we had a data error, which was an incorrect cost center, and you can notice that the error message has been returned back onto my spreadsheet. Now, as an end user, I find what the error is, I fix it, I save my spreadsheet, and I get back into transaction and use an alternative mode, which is run on errors. Now, what run on errors mode will allow me to do is, it will only pick up that particular record which had an error and then try and post it back into SAP and give me the message. Now, this is how easy it is to use Wind Shuttle query and Wind Shuttle transaction from an alternative interface like Excel and achieve efficiencies in data upload and data extraction process. Now, let's move on to another interface, which is web forms. Now, what you could also do is provide a web form interface to a transaction, apply a workflow to provide process optimization, and then post the data into SAP. Now, how could you allow the users to get onto a web form? Maybe you can create a nice landing page which looks something like this, wherein you have a lot of links to the forms. They can click on individual links and launch the form, or they could go straight into the SharePoint interface, which I'm going to show you right now, and launch the form. Now, what you have on your screen right now is the forms library. The advantage of a library is you could create multiple libraries and lock down access to those libraries only to the relevant individuals. We've got Wind Shuttle task list, where you get notified if you have any actions to be performed on any process, and you've got the Wind Shuttle process list, which keeps track of the processes that's initiated, because it's very important to actually keep a tight audit trail on what's going on in the system. So let me open up a specific form here, and what I'm going to do now is show you a common requirement, the HR module, which is employee hire action. But again, I'm trying to share a concept here. You could apply this to any module or any transaction of your choice. So what you're going to do here is present an alternate web interface to the user, but try and help the user with as much information as possible that allows you to actually reduce the data errors. So I'm going to input a new hire name and some information around that particular new hire. And again, what you see here is you've got different sections on this particular screen. You have the ability to collapse or expand certain sections based on the selections that the user could make. So the idea is to have a flexible look and feel for the end user and try and show only the relevant fields that are required in the data population process. Now, we have the ability to talk to SAP system at any given point in time. In this example, what I want to do now is find out how many open positions have been created in SAP. So for that, what I can do is expand that particular section, provide my search criteria. I would like to select all the open positions that starts with S and click on the button. Now, what this allows me to do is talk to SAP, get all the open positions in this particular example, and select one of them to move on with the process. Now, you could use this example in any other use case as well. For example, if you want to create a purchase order, you would like to see how many purchase requisitions are in the system, you could fire a Wind Shuttle query to the SAP system, get all the information back onto your web form, and then start using the information for the process. The idea is to get real-time information to the user in this use case, but alternatively what you could do is, if the information is relatively static, you could actually put it onto a SharePoint list as a scheduled job and then surface it into your web form if required. So I'm going to select one of the open positions, and again, I would like to get more information of that particular position here, which will allow me to automatically fill up the other fields that you see in this org assignment section. Now what I want to do here is populate some pay and salary information. Again, I can select the drop downs. These are all static drop downs that have been created, but again, we can have dynamic drop downs that are populated by the SAP values as well. So I'm going to populate some bank information as well. And you can have field validations, like for example, you can say if a particular field is populated, make the second field mandatory or the third field optional, for example. So I'm going to put some address information. And what's more important now is what happens to this web form, right? So I've got an approval process, which is a manager, payroll, and shared services. I've showed 3 different variations on how you can pick and choose approvers. Manager is always dedicated in this example, who's Max. I'm going to pick up Mark, who's going to be the payroll and audit team. And then you can see once the approvals have been complete, you have a shared services team that consists of more than one individual who are going to receive the action to actually look at the form and post the data into SAP. So let's start the process. Click on Save and Route, which is now going to take this form into the workflow using the Windshuttle workflow engine, and move it on to Max, who's going to get the next task of the manager approval. Now I'm going to switch the user, so I'm going to log on as Max. And when I log on as Max, what you'll see here is there's a task waiting for a new hire approval. Now what Max could do is he could also get an offline approval. Let's get an email to say this is the snapshot of the form. Click on a couple of links on the email editor, whether it's approve or reject, and then you could push the process forward in the life cycle. So we enable offline approvals as well. The next step for me is to get into payroll, which is Mark. So I'm going to log on as Mark. And what you see now is Mark is having this particular payroll action in his inbox. Now what's different here for Mark is that Mark is a payroll user, so you have the button to actually click and get the payroll information. Now the concept here is you can present different views to different participants in your workflow based on their role and have them fill out different information. What this allows you to do is not confuse the users with too many fields like you have in the native SAP transaction, and also keep the process very simple. So I'm going to type in my comments, and you can notice that the audit trail is also getting created. Now you can have reassignments to your colleagues as well. So what we do now is wait for the final step, which is shared services. Now, like I said, shared services is a team of individuals. So Mark was part of the team. So Mark sees that particular action in his task list. And if I log on as Windshuttle user, I'm also going to see a task waiting in my list because I'm also part of the shared services team. So I said it's important to have visibility into the tasks that you or the processes that you initiate. So if you click on this particular button, what that shows you is where is this process currently. And you'll notice that it's been assigned to a few individuals here and the status is mentioned as assigned. But you could also track the previous processes here to say who acted on this request and what date and time and what was the outcome and comments, if any. So this gives you visibility to know, okay, what's going on with your task. Now again, you have the advantage of applying deadlines against each activity. So what you could do is you could define this approval is allowed only 2 days, and if it doesn't complete within 2 days, you could have escalation mechanisms as well. Now what I'm going to do as a final step is click on Hire Employee, because at this point I've passed through all the checks and balances on the form interface, gone through all the approval processes as per my business requirement, and then right now the data is ready to go into SAP. Now our tools are very flexible, so you can decide the look and feel of your form, the fonts, the colors, the logos, etc. And also you could decide to follow your own workflow process, which is custom to your business requirement organization. So the value behind Windshuttle tools is the fast time to value, and our tools are very flexible if you want to adapt to your changing business requirements. Now, as you know, this particular action is going to, this particular transaction in SAP is PA40 and then create a few actions and update a few input types, which is happening in the background. Again, if you have a requirement to create the same data record in multiple instances of SAP, we could do that as well. Or if you don't want the people to hit the button and post the data manually, what you could also do is actually take this into an auto post mode, which is you can queue up the jobs and let WinShuttle do the posting for you. Now what you'll see here is the employee number, which is 82698, that's created in SAP. So I'm just going to quickly show you the data record that was just created in SAP, just to show you how quick and easy it is to get the data in. But the whole aim here is to provide as much as help possible to the user in data population and take it through all your processes for approvals and etc. to ensure that this is the right data and it's ready to go into the system. Now I'm going to type in some comments and click on approve and complete this process. Now what you've seen is a quick demonstration of a 3-step approval process, how you can take the form through different departments and then finally take the data into SAP. But when it comes to audit trail, it's also important to have the ability to look at all the forms that were posted in the past. So for example, if you wanted to look at all the historical forms for audit, you'll notice that there is a SharePoint list that gets updated constantly. So you have surfaced all the information that you want to see in this particular SharePoint list, which could then be used as a reporting tool. Or if you want to look at the audit trail, what you could do is click on Show Form simply and then get into that particular form. What you see here is the form data as well as all the audit that is attached to that particular form, which is giving you complete visibility into the process, either current or old, to suit your business requirements. Now, this was a quick demonstration of a few use cases that I've covered, and what's more important here is to note that you can use either Excel or a web form interface to drive process efficiencies and optimization. Now, what I would like to do is hand this back to Evan, who's going to provide more information on the products.
Thank you very much, Satish. As I mentioned in the earlier section, the key with WinShuttle is the difference in the journey. A key aspect of that, of course, is the no programming approach that I referred to. And in particular, what you see here is that no programming is really refers to as a simple record and math step, which is what is used to create a script that automates the interaction with SAP while applying all of the relevant authorizations and maintaining the audit trail in SAP. Recording is simply manually walking through the SAP transaction one time to teach our application what it is you want to do within SAP. This is why when we talk about the key skill sets required for using WinShuttle, we talk about SAP functional knowledge. As with any application, there is a learning curve. For new users, it may take them a few hours or even a day to create and test a new script. For experienced users, they can often create, test, modify, and finalize the script in under an hour. Carsten mentioned the BVA, which is our business value assessment, so I would like to take a moment to introduce you to it in a bit more detail. The business value assessment is a tool for helping to understand the potential impact of deploying WinShuttle in your organization to simplify, standardize, and streamline your SAP processes. What you can see on the slide here is there are two key components on the, if you will, the data input to this process. And I'll talk you through that along with the analysis that we do. The first thing to be aware of is what's called the WinShuttle benchmark database. At WinShuttle, we have a capability which Satish didn't have an opportunity to show you today, but I'll walk you through it. It's the log file that we maintain. So every action that's performed through WinShuttle is logged in the application, and so we have a very good understanding of, from that, how our applications are used. Customers actually submit log files to us, and today we have a benchmark database that consists of over 160 million records. And importantly, what that means is we have a very good statistical understanding of how our application is being used within our customer base, what transaction codes, and for those transaction codes, what kind of savings customers are realizing. We can take that and pair that with your actual transactional usage of SAP. So what I mean by that is we can work with you to collect your actual SAP usage data through log file reports, and we can merge those two together. So what that gives us is a very good picture of what are you actually doing today in SAP. So what transaction codes are being run, what's the volume of users, and for individual users, what's the volume of data they're processing. We can then overlay that with regards to WinShuttle and what we have from our benchmark database to get a very good understanding of what we believe the impact would be of applying WinShuttle to your existing use of SAP. So let me just walk you through that process. First off, to start the process, of course, the key thing is the data that I just talked about. We have the WinShuttle benchmark database, so what we require from you is a log file. It's the STL3 report. And it's really important to make a note that what we're talking about here is log data, right? There's no transactional data. There's nothing that's confidential or business sensitive. It's really just information about how you're using SAP. But of course, if there are concerns there, we're more than happy to put an NDA in place. So what do you get back from that process? We take that data, we run it through some analysis, and really what comes back is a report, which I'll walk you through an example of here in a moment. But the key thing is it allows you to be able to identify high volume transactions down to the individual user level. That then allows us to work with you to interview the identified problem areas and to better understand the current processes. In doing that, we can observe and shadow the process, and this is really kind of the second stage, if you will. The first stage of the BVA is the report that I'm about to walk you through. The second stage is to use that report to do what Karsten identified, which is to prioritize where you start. And in doing that prioritization, it's working with the business to drill into more detail and ultimately to deliver a process improvement plan, which in turn is a deployment plan for Wind Shuttle. So let me just quickly walk you through an example of what we're talking about here. 3 quick slides to show you. First one really is a Wind Shuttle capacity enablement. This is, if you will, the cover page to the report, which is really giving a high-level view of how you're using SAP today and the projected impact or the projected benefits of deploying Wind Shuttle across your SAP transactional usage. We take that down another level where you can see it's an actual detailed listing of all the transaction codes that are in use, the volume of those codes, what we call a complexity ratio, which has to do with the number of fields that are being entered on average into the transaction, and the median seconds we would expect to save per transaction record based upon the information we have in the Wind Shuttle benchmark database. That's at the transaction level. We can actually drill down another level, and what you'll see here is for each individual transaction code, we can actually go down to the individual users that are using that transaction code and provide information around, again, the volume of data that they're processing and the projected benefits they would receive by using Wind Shuttle to simplify and accelerate how they use SAP. That's a very quick introduction to the business value assessment. Again, the benefit of the business value assessment is the factual view it gives you of your use of SAP and how it allows you to prioritize your deployment of Wind Shuttle across your SAP usage. So, again, just to reiterate what we talked about, the value that Wind Shuttle delivers, importantly, the simplified user interface that Satish demonstrated and that we talk about, really it's providing users the ability to only work with the fields of data that are required for a particular process. That's quite important when we talk about the end-user experience and the speed with which they can work with any particular transaction code. In addition, validation at the point of entry. We talked about the challenges around data quality, and hopefully what you see in here is our ability to validate data at the point of entry, ensuring better data quality within SAP. And finally, end-to-end process control and visibility via Wind Shuttle workflow and the reporting and audit trail capabilities associated with it, which is what Satish demonstrated there right at the end. Now, what I'd like to do is hand it back to Susie for our final poll before walking through a little bit more information about Wind Shuttle.
Thank you very much indeed, Evan. So coming up, this is the final poll for the day. So if you could just tick the box that is most appropriate to you, which best describes your organization's shared services deployment or level of maturity. We do not have a shared services operation today. We have a shared services for some of the SAP finance HR operations. We have shared services for other SAP operations, or we have shared services for multiple SAP operations, including finance, HR, and others. If you can tick the boxes most appropriate to you, please, and I'll be closing the poll shortly. So just tick the box most appropriate to your own SAP and functional usage, and closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Coming in at about 63% of you responding to that one, so thank you. Let's have a look at those statistics coming up on your screen now. So as you can see, over half of you using having shared services deployment for finance and HR. So interesting results, and back to you please, Evan.
Thank you very much, Susie. So just quickly, to learn more about Wind Shuttle, you can visit our website at windshuttle.com. I would encourage you to also visit Wind Shuttle TV on YouTube. Quite a number of customer video case studies and product demonstrations that are available there. In addition, we're on all the usual social media outlets, so Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And finally, if you'd like to learn more, please do feel free to contact me directly at evanschultz@windshuttle.com. And some upcoming events. We'll be at Sapphire and TechEd coming up at the middle of November in Madrid. And for those of you that are here in the UK and Ireland, we will be at the UKI SAP User Group in Manchester the 18th through the 20th of November. That concludes my presentation. What I'd like to do is hand it back to Susie now for the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, Evan. So let's go through questions, of which we have very many. I'd like to put the first one, please, through to Carsten. Carsten, when you were looking at Wind Shuttle, you talked specifically about two areas that you decided to really focus the Wind Shuttle solution on. Were there any other processes within finance and HR that you were actually looking to apply Wind Shuttle to, or were these the specific two that you decided on?
No, we did look at other processes. We did look at the master data process, but decided to deselect because we have another program and another process coming in that area. But we decided to use in parts of our period end process to automate certain transactions that we're doing there. And we also are using it for auto posting in some parts of in our requisition to pay process, and we have also in our PO creation process been using the Wind Shuttle scripts.
Okay, thank you. And also, I'll follow on with a second question for you, please, Carsten. As far as you were very, very clear about the financial benefits, with almost, if not over, $500,000 being realized within the first year, what were the parameters that you used to measure those benefits, and were those parameters decided and tracked by Wind Shuttle?
The parameters basically is headcount, so how many people we have operating in the process. So we were looking at how many transactions those people were doing, and with the automation degree. So that was actually an internal tracking that we were doing. We are able, of course, to track part of that together with Wind Shuttle in terms of saying, well, how many transactions now flowing through a process that is substantially faster than an old process. But in essence, the benefit tracking and making sure that the people actually were leaving the process and either leaving the company or being reassigned to new things was entirely with our project team.
Okay, a specific question here, which I'll put to Evan or Satish. With Excel interface, does Wind Shuttle work only with a specific version of Excel?
No, we are compatible with all different versions of Excel. However, there is a restriction on the number of rows that Excel presents in, I think, 2003 and 2007, but Wind Shuttle can work with all different versions.
Okay. And is there any kind of network bandwidth limit that the solution might have? And for example, the number of concurrent users on the system at the same time, how does that work?
We use the RFC connectivity to SAP system, so obviously there is a setup required from the SAP system side to accept RFC connections. But yeah, we expect to have an ideal network speed which helps us to perform these updates faster and better.
Okay. Question back to you, please, Carsten. Are Maersk using Biller Direct as part of SAP? And do you use, or are you planning on using, Wind Shuttle for the collection of debt?
We are using Biller Direct, but only in one area of the world. When we're looking at Wind Shuttle in terms of collecting of debt, then I think it's a matter of definition. We do have open invoices, part of what we've done already. So we do have invoices open where customers are coming to our counter and paying them. But if it's a matter of a collection management platform and programming that on something like Wind Shuttle, the answer is no. There we are using, say, standard SAP products combined with a CRM system.
Okay. And a question back to Evan or Satish. What additional licenses are needed in SAP in order to use such a solution?
Yeah, thank you, Susie. So if you're posting to SAP, then of course you need to have the appropriate SAP license that allows you to do that. So we would assume that because we're talking about supporting existing SAP users, they'll already have the necessary license.
Okay, and is there any data interface for a data feed from OCR internet forms, basically forms other than those provided by SharePoint?
We do offer plugins in our Wind Shuttle Foundation environment that can talk to external systems and accept data connections or data feeds. So if we have a specific use case around it, we can advise what's the appropriate plugin and how we can achieve it. But we have the ability to accept data from different systems into our workflow process.
Okay, and also are the drop-down fields live, as in connected to SAP, or are they SharePoint lists?
You have the options of doing both. So if you would like to make connection to SAP and get the live data to be populated into the drop-down, we can do that. Or if you think that the data is relatively static, we could schedule jobs every day or at regular intervals, have the data staged in a SharePoint list, and then use it in our web form. We have options to do both.
Okay. Any final questions from the floor, please? We have the last 2 minutes to put those questions to our speakers. How is security handled?
We leverage the standard security setup that's there in SAP. So all we do is actually take the client username and password and talk to SAP to verify whether this particular user is a valid user in SAP. That's step one. And step two is whether the user is allowed to extract that information or upload the data into that particular transaction. So in simple words, if you can't do something manually in SAP, you can't do the same thing using Wind Shuttle.
Okay. And do you support a single sign-on?
Yes, we do.
You do. Perfect. Good. Well, look, thank you very much indeed for the presenters' input and commitment to today's webinar. As you can see on the slide that in front of you, if you would like to reach out to Evan Schultz, please do so. You've got his email and email address and telephone number there. So we look forward to welcoming you at our next webinar, which is next Monday, looking at the top 5 reasons why suppliers really want to invoice you electronically. So if purchase to pay is your key focus area, make sure you join us for that. And similarly, we have a number of conferences that should most definitely be in your calendar. The AP Tech and the invoicing event coming up in December, and the European Summit for Leaders in Shared Services in March. And both of those events are taking place in London, so we look forward to welcoming you there.